Hi, I'm Jan Exum from McDonough, Georgia. I was diagnosed with COVID-19 back in March, and my adventure began when my friend Karen Ditzler and I went to New York City to attend the 50th anniversary of the Allman Brothers celebration. And we were very careful on the plane. We wore a mask, we sanitized our seats, and at that time they were even saying you didn't need to wear a mask. And we were so diligent about our hand washing and sanitizing the whole time we were there. But we left to come home on Wednesday, March 11th. And even on the way back from the flight from JFK to Atlanta, there were seats in between us because people had begun to drop off on their traveling plans. And that was unusual to have that plane not full on the way back from New York. When we got back, it was Wednesday, March 11th, and things were business as usual for us. I even stayed with my 90-year-old stepmother that weekend to help take care of her, and I felt perfectly fine. Then on Sunday, March 15th, I woke up with a stuffy head and a little bit of a nagging headache, but nothing that was major. I get migraines and sinus headaches, and this was nothing as severe as that at the time. And then I basically felt pretty good for the next 2 days other than having some laryngitis. So my friend Karen came back to have dinner with me on that Tuesday. And then the next morning, Wednesday, I woke up with a fever and a cough. The fever was low grade, about 100.6. And I did not feel that badly, but I knew I was going to have to call my allergist because they had already started telling people if you had any kind of symptoms of cough or fever, you could not go into medical offices. And it was time for my yearly appointment, so that's why I called. And they did tell me I couldn't come in. I had to contact my primary care physician, which I did. And they sent me to a nurse triage line that had already been set up for people that were having any type of symptoms that might be COVID. And at that time, they sent me all the way up to near Emory University to have the COVID test. And I was diagnosed on that Sunday, 2 days later after my test. And at the time, I wasn't feeling that well, but I was able to do laundry or do a load of dishes, read, watch some TV, nothing severe. But on Monday, which was 5 days after the fever started, things began to decline. I started feeling very spaced out. I did not really feel like my head was exactly attached to my body, and I really couldn't read or watch TV. And during that weekend, I began to feel nauseous as well. I was eating some, but food was not tasting right, and a nurse friend dropped off a care package to me, which included some nausea meds and a pulse oximeter to check my oxygen levels, and a Whitman sampler box of candy. I'm not a big chocolate candy person, and at that time I had no idea how important those box of chocolates were going to become to me. I discovered that if something had a little bit of a sweet taste, I could get a few bites of that down. But if it was anything that was salty or savory, it would taste like an entire cup of salt had been poured over it, and I just could not get things down. It would take me all day to try to get like one cracker down. So I could tolerate 1 or 2 pieces of that candy a day, and it became, really important to me. And I lost about 7 or 8 pounds over the next 10 days. The coughing was so bad that lying down in bed was not possible. I had to stay in the recliner, and I really didn't sleep much. I mostly just dozed on and off. I saw another one of your interviews where a couple talked about the man had such violent coughing that he really couldn't control his bladder. And unfortunately, that was the same thing for me. And I now live alone. My husband passed away about 2 years ago. And my family was very upset that I was alone. And it was scary, but I absolutely did not want anyone to come into contact with me and be exposed. And it was a very frightening time. Well, on Tuesday, March 24th, things took another downturn. I just did not feel like moving. I just wanted to sleep, stay in a chair. And my daughter, Natalie, just insisted I call back to the nurse triage line. And they told me immediately that I had to call 911 and get to the hospital. And I told them then that I felt like I could breathe well, but they told me about a person in Coweta County that had just passed away that was in the home by themselves. So of course that alarmed me. And they asked me could I go outside and wait on the ambulance. So I did. And I remember getting in the ambulance and leaving my home just not knowing what the outcome was going to be. And I just remember thinking that if it was time for me to join my husband, I would, and I'd be okay. And I got there and they put me in isolation and put the N95 mask on and brought in a fan for filtering the room air. And I had a fever around 102 then. So they gave me Tylenol and took blood, and I was so cold, but they would not give me any kind of covers because of the fever. And fortunately for me, I did not have the low oxygen like so many people had. They did a chest x-ray. It definitely showed inflammation. I was dehydrated and I got an IV fluid. And it was a very lonely feeling in that room because people really did not want to come in there and be in contact with you. When I was discharged about 8 hours later, fortunately I did not have to stay overnight, the doctor came in and said, I wish I could tell you that everything's going to be okay when you leave here. But unfortunately, he said the nature of COVID-19 is that sometimes you're doing well and then your condition can just decline rapidly. So it was very unnerving to go home by myself and to realize that there's a possibility that I could get worse. And for me, the main thing was the next, say, 8 to 10 days, I just was very fuzzy and foggy. I had a lot of times when I was not really sure exactly what was going on, but I functioned. I had to. My daughter called every day, my sister-in-law, I talked to my son some, and other people, but I didn't remember a lot of that. And it was probably another 8 or 9 days when I finally felt like my head came back to my shoulders. I think it was around Friday, April the 3rd, that I thought, I think I remember some things that were going on, and I felt like maybe things were going to be normal. I was still coughing and the fever was going away, and I was starting to eat a little better. I was very disturbed because I had not wanted my coffee. It tasted horrible, and it was still tasting pretty bad. It was another week or so before the taste started being better. And there was some depression issues and some questioning of why I was okay but other people were not. Because at that time there were just so many people in the hospital passing away. And I knew that I had many prayers going up for me, but I also knew that many others had the same amount. And I had that feeling of, why was I okay? I didn't really know. It took me a while before I could really walk very far and to build up stamina. And now we are 7 months out and I still have chronic hoarseness. I've been seeing the ENT and having some things done. And he said, unfortunately, they're seeing this lingering problem with hoarseness, probably from the strained vocal cords from the coughing. And there are hopes that it will go away. And I feel so fortunate because I have another friend that's still on oxygen that was sick the week before I even got sick. But I think ongoing, we just have to find ways to live with this. We're really not meant to be in seclusion, but we've got to do things and wear a mask responsibly and remember that it's not just about us and our freedoms, but about other people as well. And I did donate plasma twice, and I wanted to do that, but I feel like we've just got to get back out there and live, but find new ways of doing that. And I commend these places that are trying to do things differently so that we can start to live again. And I just hope and pray that we can find a way to get through this and have a vaccine and get back to living. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you to 97.1 The River for helping me through things with the music that I was able to listen to all these last months in being in isolation. Thanks.